Have you ever wondered why just looking at a distant mountain range can make your heart suddenly slow down? The silence of mountains, ancient energy held in stone, will take you into the deepest layers of the earth, where strata of rock preserve billions of years of memory, quietly shaping our climate, our rivers, and the lives we live today. In the minutes ahead, you'll be lulled to sleep by gentle, accurate, scientific truths that are rarely told. Why stone can speak of time, why pressure creates beauty, and why erosion itself is a gift for future generations. If these stories resonate with you, please subscribe to the Smart Sleep channel so we can drift through each night together in peace. Let tonight begin very slowly, like a deep breath. You can lie down, let your back be fully supported, and allow your hands to rest. If you can, gently close your eyes and try to imagine this. The earth we live on was once not green, not gentle, with no forests, no snow on mountain peaks, no small roads you've driven along through valleys. Long, long ago, before the memory of any civilization, this planet was nothing but a gigantic mass of fire, roiling, blazing red, chaotic. What we now call mountains did not exist then. There were no Rockies, no Appalachians, no ranges. You once glimpsed through a car window only a sea of boiling lava, like a young rage that doesn't yet know what it will become. Then over time, a kind of time the human lifespan cannot measure, the surface of the planet began to cool. A thin, fragile crust, like fresh new skin, slowly solidified. Minerals crystallized, and solid plates began to form, drifting atop the molten layer beneath. There was no storyteller, no audience, no written history. Only matter quietly obeying the enduring laws of gravity, heat, and pressure. And yet, from that silence, the first stories of mountains began. Try picturing the Earth's surface as a great fabric. When these crustal plates drifted toward each other, they did not gently stack like neatly folded blankets. They shoved, pushed, collided, subducted, slid past, broke apart. Some plates were forced down into the depths and melted again. Others were squeezed, crumpled, folded, lifted. Those folds over millions, tens of millions of years became the first mountains to stand up. Not a sudden miracle, but the result of countless patient contacts, countless harsh collisions, and countless times being forced to change. If you could watch all that in time-lapse, perhaps you would see mountain ranges rise like colossal waves of stone, silent yet decisive, emerging from a sea of fire and chaos toward the steady horizons that later humans would call majestic. But on our timescale, some decades, a few tens of thousands of days, a few million heartbeats, everything seems still. The mountains don't move, the rocks don't speak. And it is precisely that lack of hurry that is worth pausing to listen to tonight. Because sometimes, to understand a mountain, we have to briefly set aside our human calendar and learn to feel by the rhythm of billions of years. Have you ever felt that time is moving too fast? In what feels like a moment, your hair has turned grey, your knees ache, and the people who once sat beside you at the dinner table now live only in memory. Modern life keeps telling us we must be faster, more efficient, stay young longer, decide sooner, reinvent ourselves on cycles counted in weeks and months. And so we easily fall into believing that anything of value must arrive quickly. If we don't change fast enough, it means we've lost. If we don't see results soon, it means we were wrong. But when we look back at the history of the planet itself, the story quietly whispers the opposite. The most enduring things require stretches of time so long that humans are too impatient to witness them in full. The first mountain was not born to the sound of cheering. There was no ribbon cutting, no applause. It was simply the consequence of silent forces. Gravity pulling down, heat pushing up, plates colliding, compressing. It was pushed upwards slowly, millimeter by millimeter, through eras during which no remembering creature existed to record it. And yet in the end, it became the outline of the sky, the place where snow rests, where rivers are born, the anchor that lets humans look up and feel smaller, but safe. When we understand mountains as wrinkles on the face of the earth folds, shaped by countless upheavals, they suddenly feel familiar. Because at 45, 60, 70, 90, we too begin to have our own wrinkles, on our skin, in our hearts, in our memories. Each time you change jobs, each time you lost someone you love, each time you stood back up after a difficult surgery, after a divorce, after a tight financial season, after a sleepless night in the emergency room, each of those was a collision. While you were in it, everything only felt hot, raw, chaotic, like lava. No one called it beautiful. No one called it wisdom. It was just pain. But if you look with a mountain's timescale, you'll see some things in your life also need an almost unreasonable amount of time to stand up. Not a few weeks of meditation to erase sorrow. Not a few courses to cure loneliness. Not a handful of advice sessions to mend a torn parent-child, mother-child, or marital relationship. The first mountain did not choose the shortest way. It allowed the invisible forces to work slowly but steadily. It endured pressure without rushing the result. It didn't compare itself to the neighboring ocean, didn't envy the wide plains, didn't try to prove anything to the sky. It simply took shape in the only real way. Slow, deep, continuous. Sometimes what we need in midlife or in the later years is not a quick, total makeover plan, but a soft acceptance that we are each in our own geological process. Layers of experience stacking, old fractures being filled with new minerals, certain fears giving birth to other kinds of wisdom. What seems to exhaust you today may well be the pressure that is pushing part of you higher, clearer, steadier. Try looking back at your life as if looking at a cross-section of a cliff. At the bottom layer is childhood, clear or not, but foundational. Above it, the layer of youth, rash decisions, unfinished loves, days of overwork. Higher up, the layer of responsibility, of family, of worries, few truly understood. Each layer has its own color, its own texture, its solid patches, and its crumbly parts. When we only look at short fragments, everything seems disjointed, meaningless. But if we step back, like a patient geologist, we see they align into a story. No layer is redundant. No upheaval is entirely meaningless. Mountains are born from chaos, but they do not remain in chaos. That can be a gentle way to forgive your former selves. The angry self, the impulsive self, the frightened self, the mistaken self. They are your earlier lava. Your task now is not to erase them, but to let time, understanding, and kindness toward yourself gradually cool and harden them, so that when you look back, you recognize them as the bedrock that has lifted you. In the darkness of the room where you lie, somewhere outside, a city may already have sunk into quiet. Roads once crowded now hold only a few scattered lights, just like Earth after its storms of fire and massive collisions. Eventually a time comes when the surface cools, and part of matter quietly chooses to rest, It is exactly in these quiet moments that new structures are set. For you as well. Some of the most important life changes do not happen when you are straining and sprinting, but when you allow yourself to pause, breathe, and look deeply into what has long been within you. Tonight, in the story The Silence of Mountains, ancient energy held in stone, as we follow the journey from a sea of fire to mountain peaks. It is not only a geology lesson, it is a soft reminder. You are not late. Some good things require an entire lifetime, even several generations to take shape. Some reconciliations only bloom when hearts are ripe enough. Some dreams only gain clear edges after storms have passed. And sometimes, beauty is not in how fast we arrive, but in the fact that we did not give up halfway and did not let early turmoil define everything that came after. You can allow yourself to be gentler with yourself, to ask, not, why am I not finished yet? But, what within me is quietly growing, slowly but surely, like the first mountain, not appearing in one night to dazzle anyone, but whispering to the universe. From chaos, something steadfast can arise, and who knows tomorrow morning, when you open your eyes, with just a bit more patience for your own journey, you may notice, beneath all your weariness, a layer of bedrock is already quietly helping you stand more firmly than yesterday. And once we understand how mountains rise from chaos, a soft question taps at the door. If mountains are the form, where is the earth's memory? Who records it? And how can humans read these silent pages? The answer lies right beneath our feet, in the seemingly lifeless slabs of stone. Imagine yourself sitting quietly beside a wall of sedimentary rock, where layers of color stack atop one another like pages in a book that the wind can never scatter. Pale layers, dark layers, coarse grains, powder-fine bands. None of it is random. Each sedimentary layer forms when mud, sand, shells, volcanic dust, even salt from a vanished sea, settle on the bottom of a river, a lake, or an ocean, piling up in silence over stretches of time almost impossible to imagine. The weight of the upper layers presses the lower ones tight. Minerals in water seep through and cement them into stone. Then, one very distant day, when the land is lifted, the water withdraws, and humans walk by and see a multicolored rock face. They are not just seeing rock, they are looking at climate memory, ocean memory, the memory of ancient wet and dry seasons, none of it ever written in human script. At 45, 60, or 80, perhaps you have once stood at the Grand Canyon, or beside a roadside cliff in Utah, Colorado, or Arizona, and glanced at those even horizontal stripes without thinking much. Tonight, we'll try to look back a little more slowly. Each line is a boundary between two spans of time when environmental conditions shifted enough that the new sediment differed from what came before. Maybe the water deepened, maybe the current slowed, maybe ash from a distant volcanic eruption drifted in and coated the surface. Red tones reveal iron oxidized in warm, dry air, signaling a different climate. Smooth grey layers, sometimes streaked with tiny marine shells, tell you this was once a shallow seafloor. Within one rock face, geologists can read, this was once a desert, here an ancient riverbed, there a marsh, here a shallow sea. Not guesswork, conclusions drawn from decades and decades of meticulous study. Microscopes, chemical analyses, comparisons with places where sediments are forming today. Then there are traces with recognizable shapes, a leaf imprinted on thin stone, a seashell stuck high on a cliff thousands of meters above current sea level, a dinosaur skeleton in the middle of a desert. That's when the ancient diary speaks not only in colors and grains, but through the portraits of living things. Fossils don't only say there was a sea or there was a forest. They tell more precisely. The water was salty or brackish, warm or cold, the air rich or poor in oxygen, whether grasses and shrubs could endure frost, which species vanished when the environment changed. Modern science is so subtle that it can use ratios of oxygen isotopes in shells to estimate seawater temperatures at the time that the creature was alive. In other words, within a small piece of rock resides the code of an entire climate season long past. And all of this reveals itself only when we accept sitting down, being still, and listening. The fascinating thing is, stone never rushes to tell. It is not like us. It doesn't post online, doesn't write emotional memoirs. It simply lies there, patient, one layer over another, one fossil beside a grain of sand, one color fading into the next. Because rock does not speak, those who read it are forced to be quiet. Geologists, paleontologists out in the field must cultivate something very close to meditation. Slow, careful observation, no forcing their own wishes onto the landscape, measuring each layer, recording every shift, watching patterns repeat rather than clinging to one noisy sign. In this way, science resembles a good late-night conversation. Few words, much listening. If you notice, that is exactly what modern life often steals from us. At many points in our lives, especially in America, where the pace is fast and standards of success are repeated endlessly, we're pulled into a very hasty way of reading our own story. A financial setback is instantly labeled a major failure. A broken marriage is declared ruin. A diagnosis makes us believe everything afterward is only decline. But if you see your life as a long sedimentary sequence, you'll realize every event, every joy, every wound, every calm period is, in fact, slowly settling, stacking into layers more orderly than you think. It's just that when you're standing in the freshly laid mud of one layer, you cannot yet see the whole cliff. Back to the ancient stones, people find marine shells on high mountain ridges, and from that deduce that those peaks were once under the sea. They discover thick seams of coal and know that the place used to be a lush, swampy forest with dense canopy, plants dying, buried, compressed, transformed into dark energy deep underground. They see a thick ash layer interrupting calm sediments and reconstruct a massive volcanic eruption that altered the climate, affected life across the region, and sometimes triggered mass extinctions. All of that is no longer happening, but still there, like diary entries never erased. At your age, you likely have your own ash layers, an unexpected crisis, a surgery, a phone call in the night, a loved one's passing, a forced move, a financial loss that made the family tighten every corner. At the time, everything was stained, the color of emergency. But if tonight you just try to sit in inner quiet and look at them as sedimentary layers, you may notice, amid those losses, something new appeared. A habit of caring for your health, a deeper gratitude for those still here, a clearer mind around money, an ability to hold your own fear instead of denying it. No one likes the ash layers, but, as in the earth strata, they mark. From here on, everything is different, and within that difference, we learn what peaceful days could never teach. The science of ancient rocks also offers a trustworthy lesson in perseverance. To understand Earth's memory, humanity cannot ask today and fully answer tomorrow. Scientists spend entire careers studying one region's rocks, comparing them with others, debating, revising theories as new data comes. No decent truth arrives without verification, cross-checking, and more listening. That is a worthy way to treat your own memories too. Don't rush to conclude, I am a failure, I am a burden, I wasted my life, just because you're staring at one narrow slice. A bad year, a single painful decision. Give yourself the right to reread your life with the same precision, gentleness, and patience that science uses to read stone. Accept complexity. Step back. Accept that some things only reveal their meaning when seen from afar. You can picture each period of your life as a colored band in that imagined rock wall before you. A bright layer of cheerful years, trips, moments when your children and grandchildren gathered around. A darker band of exhaustion, lonely seasons in a house slowly feeling larger as loved ones left. A shimmering layer of small but precious moments. A neighbor at your door with a slice of cake. A surprise call from an old friend. An afternoon of good sunlight at the window when you realized you were still here, still capable of feeling moved. All of these layers are you, and like ancient stone, they only tell their deepest story when the reader is quiet enough. That's why younger people sometimes don't fully understand you. They've only read a few top layers and rush to judge. But you, listening to these words now, know better than anyone that beneath the surface lies an older, deeper, intricate, beautiful structure, where hard choices, silent sacrifices, and many risings after falls have accumulated into something very much like wisdom. That wisdom isn't loud, doesn't need a plaque on the wall. It's like a fine fossil hidden in rock. Only those who are patient, respectful, and gentle in their tapping will see it. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you don't need to remember all the rock names. Don't need to distinguish shale from limestone. Don't need to memorize geologic eras. Just keep one image. The earth holds a journal written in sediments and fossils, and to read it, humans are required to slow down. In the same way, your life holds an inner journal, and to understand it, you yourself need a large enough stillness. You no longer have to prove yourself quickly. You don't have to rush to fix the past. You only need to look, acknowledge, and allow deeper meanings to surface slowly. And the small, gentle lesson we can take from ancient rock is this: don't live as though each moment is a final verdict. See it instead as grains of sediment settling, waiting to join into a wider picture. Every love you've given, every apology you've made, every time you've stayed patient with family, every intention you haven't fulfilled but still hold in your heart, all have their place in the strata of your life. When you are quiet enough to listen, you'll see you are not just a thin slice of today, but an entire history more beautiful than you thought. And perhaps that realization itself will become a new, sturdier, kinder layer of rock beneath your feet, supporting the rest of your days with more ease, more self-respect, and more gratitude for the path you've walked. And once we've read those journal pages written in ancient stone, another question begins to surface quietly. If rock can record billions of years of memory, what about the ground beneath our bed tonight? Does it truly stand still as we think? Let your body relax a bit more now. Inhale slowly, exhale gently, and imagine this. The Earth's surface you trust as solid is actually made of enormous rafts, drifting very slowly atop a molten layer below. Scientists call them tectonic plates, These are rigid slabs, tens to over 100 kilometers thick, fitting together like puzzle pieces around the planet. They don't glide swiftly like boats on waves, but creep, a few millimeters to a few centimeters per year, so slowly that within a single human lifetime we can hardly feel it. Yet, on longer timescales, those tiny motions are enough to raise whole mountain ranges, open new oceans, erase old seas, and shape the world map you memorized on the classroom wall years ago. Imagine India today, a bustling subcontinent of color, crowded cities, great rivers once a drifting landmass. Over 100 million years ago, it lay far to the south, near what we call the southern hemisphere. Slowly, silently, it moved north, like a gigantic stone ship with no captain, guided only by convection currents, hot material rising, cooler sinking in the mantle deep beneath Earth's crust. Then, about 50 million years ago, the Indian plate collided with the Eurasian plate. Neither rigid block could simply swallow the other, so they crumpled, folded, and stacked. The result? The Himalayas, with Everest still towering today. What many don't realize is, the Himalayas are not finished. India continues to press in, very slowly but steadily. On average, the range is still being uplifted by a few millimeters each year, even as wind, rain, and ice wear it down. Which means, if tonight you lie in a warm house somewhere and think of those distant peaks, remember, while you sleep, they are still being reshaped, adjusted, built up like a sculpture no one ever stops working on. On the other side, the Rockies, the emblem of the American West, also carry this story of invisible movement. Many parts of the Rockies are made of sedimentary rocks from ancient seas that no longer exist, from layers that once lay on the floor of a vast inland ocean stretching across North America in the age of dinosaurs. As plates shifted, those seafloors were compressed, thrust up, lifted into mountains. So today, when you drive through Colorado or Montana and see tall cliffs with marine fossils at surprising heights, that is proof that this seemingly fixed land once rose and sank and wandered over millions of years. What we want to whisper to each other tonight is not numbers, but a feeling. Even when our eyes see a motionless skyline, beneath it, the planet has never slept. The plates still drift, collide, stretch, compress. Most of the time, these shifts are gentle, so subtle that humans only notice after mountains exist. A new continental shelf has formed, or a coastline has changed. Yes, sometimes energy accumulates until it releases as earthquakes or other frightening events. But in tonight's story, we're looking at the softer side of this truth. Movement is the norm, not an error, and most of Earth's movement happens in silence, with astounding persistence. We live our whole lives on a moving floor and still manage to build houses, plant trees, raise children, write letters, listen to music, and love. There is something in that image that makes us feel both small and held. Because, just like tectonic plates, our inner lives are rarely completely still. Think of yourself 10, 20, 40 years ago. How did you react to criticism? How you held on to anger? How you endured sadness? If you look closely, you'll see shifts. Tiny, slow, so subtle you didn't notice while they were happening. One day, you realize you're calmer about something that once would have kept you awake all night. A bothersome phone call that used to ignite your temper now only brings a sigh and a smile. A mistake by a grandchild, a thing you might once have scolded harshly, now becomes a chance to sit down and speak gently. These changes did not arrive overnight, nor from a single inspiring slogan. They are the result of countless experiences, reflections, stumbles, acts of forgiveness like hidden forces beneath the ground, nudging a plate along by another millimeter each year. There have also been times when you've felt your own plate collisions, two values clashing, generations disagreeing, two choices pulling you in opposite directions. In such moments, it may have felt chaotic, like the ground shaking, but looking back from today, you may see that from those collisions, a new mountain range formed inside you, a firmer integrity, a guiding principle, a capacity not to turn away from truth. No one wants earthquakes, yet without motion, we would have no broad highlands for rivers to flow from, for clouds to gather, for climate to balance. Similarly, no one asks for hurt, but without inner shifts, we would remain flat forever, with nowhere for wisdom to take hold. The comforting part is, most truly important transformations in us do not happen during storms, but in nights very much like this one. Quiet, slow, a bit tired, a bit thoughtful. Maybe after closing the door, you sit in your familiar armchair with a cup of tea, thinking about a sharp word you spoke today, and suddenly feeling a touch of regret. Next time, you'll soften your voice. That adjustment is 1 millimeter of movement. Another night, you look at an old photo of someone gone, and instead of drowning in, "if only," you whisper a thank you, letting your heart rest a little more. That too is a millimeter's shift. Little by little, these movements reshape your inner landscape. This leads us to another scientific truth, also worth whispering before sleep. As tectonic plates move, they do not wander in complete chaos. They're guided by convection currents in the mantle, hot material rising because it's lighter, cooling and sinking again, forming deep cycles. Movements on the surface may look scattered, but underneath are structured patterns. In our lives, we often see only the surface. A bad event, bad news, a misunderstanding. But if we trust that over time our inner life can find deeper currents that are healthier, we're less likely to despair when one part of our life collides with another. Not everything wears an obvious meaning right away, but there are quiet laws that help us mature if we don't insist on rejecting every difficulty. Tonight, as you lie still, try holding this image. The Earth spinning on its axis, orbiting the Sunday. On its crust, plates are shifting. On those plates, mountains, rivers, your home, your bed, your pillow, all moving together. Yet, because they move within certain laws, you can feel stable enough to sleep. Within you, movements like this are happening too. New ways of thinking, gently replacing old ones. Emotions once sharp, now rounded, less likely to cut others. Values once blurry, now clearer. You don't need to force a rebirth in one seminar, one vacation, one New Year's resolution. Let these shifts follow the tempo of plate tectonics. Slow, steady, almost invisible day to day, but astonishing when you look back after some years at the map of yourself, and the gentle lesson we can carry with us softly, so the night doesn't break, is this: don't rush to declare yourself stuck or stagnant just because you don't see big changes. Like a mountain still rising by millimeters, like the Rockies still holding the marks of an ancient sea, like the Himalayas still being lifted by collisions no one hears. You too are changing even when you feel you're only repeating an ordinary day. Each small choice, each time you speak kindly instead of harshly, each time you listen instead of judging, is a unit of movement. If tonight you can drift into sleep with a gentle understanding that you still have the capacity to shift in a better direction at any age, then perhaps that is the most beautiful kind of tectonics. Silent, enduring, needing no fanfare. Yet enough so that one day, when you look back, you recognize a new horizon in your own soul. Clearer, warmer, more steadfast. And once we understand that those silent movements are also reshaping us, another question gently appears. If mountains are lifted by collisions, then what are the most beautiful stones born from comfortable, pleasant places, or the harshest realms? To answer, tonight we'll go a little deeper together, using only imagination. You don't need to leave your pillow. Picture this. Beneath the soil and rock we walk on every day lie darker, deeper layers where sunlight never reaches, only intense heat and crushing pressure so great that everything we're familiar with is transformed. Down there, carbon, the simple element found in coal, in tree trunks, in our own bodies, can be driven into completely new structures. At normal conditions, carbon can be soft graphite, easily broken, leaving dark streaks on paper. But at depths of more than 100 kilometers beneath our feet, where pressure is tens of times higher, where temperatures can exceed 1000 degrees Celsius, carbon atoms are forced together, arranged into a crystal lattice so tightly packed that there is almost no space left. From that harsh environment, if the conditions are right and enough time passes, they become diamonds. Among the hardest substances, transparent, able to bend light into sparkling flashes that humans later called beauty. What's interesting is, diamonds are not formed in velvet. They are not born in warm, gentle, mild conditions. They require the right kind of pressure, the right degree of heat, and most importantly, a very long time in that environment without being destroyed. Then one day, deep magmas carry them upward through ancient volcanic pipes. As the magma cools, it leaves behind diamond-bearing deposits for humans to discover. In other words, what is seen as a symbol of luxury on the surface is, in truth, a byproduct, an accidental exposure of slow, persistent geological processes in the dark. Emeralds are similar, but their story is more delicate. They are a variety of beryl. But to become that deep green, like a forest after rain, they need trace elements such as chromium or vanadium to slip into the crystal lattice. This only occurs under very rare geological conditions, where fluids rich in beryllium meet rocks rich in chromium at suitable temperatures and pressures. A small deviation, and there is no emerald, only ordinary rock. Beauty here is the outcome of a rare combination of composition, pressure, temperature, and time, impossible to hurry or cheaply copy. Other gemstones tell their own versions of the same lesson. Ruby, sapphire, amethyst, jade. All are minerals that have endured conditions that are anything but comfortable. Crystals grow beautifully only when the environment is stable yet harsh enough. Not shattered, not too chaotic, but never shallow. You could say, nature does not glorify suffering, but it acknowledges that certain subtle forms of order only appear when matter is pushed to its limits and still manages to hold its structure. From a scientific perspective, this is entirely natural. High pressure and temperature force atoms to rearrange themselves, to find the most stable positions, to reduce excess energy, forming symmetrical, orderly crystal structures. The beauty our eyes see, the clarity, the colors, the way they reflect light is the direct consequence of a disciplined inner arrangement. There is no romantic intention here, only physics and chemistry at work. But we, with human hearts, cannot help but see in this a gentle metaphor for our own journey. Think of the hardest periods of your life, a financial crisis that collapsed your plans, a medical diagnosis that suddenly made everything fragile, a divorce, a child leaving home, a friend's betrayal, a wrong decision that dragged along consequences. Those times were not beautiful, not sparkling, and had no inspiring soundtrack. They felt more like darkness and pressure at depth, cramped, suffocating, often making you feel like you were shattering. Tonight, we are not here to say that all suffering is good, or that enduring automatically turns you into a diamond. That would be unkind and untrue. In reality, some pressures destroy. Some forms of violence must never be justified. In some situations, we must leave to survive. Nature is the same. Many things never become crystals. They only break down. But alongside that truth, there is another, gentler one. Some challenges, though never chosen, once passed through, leave within us a new, more solid structure, not because we glorify pain, but because in the process of facing it and rearranging the inside, certain qualities are crystallized. Recall something specific. Maybe the first time you lost your job and had to start over at an age that no longer felt young. At that moment, the weight of failure pressed hard, your self-worth worn thin. But from that collision, perhaps you learned to manage money more wisely, to see clearly who truly stood by you in difficulty, to understand that your value is not confined to a job title. That is a kind of new crystal lattice forming, more disciplined, more realistic, kinder toward yourself. Or a period of caring for a seriously ill loved one, exhausted to the bone, sometimes resentful, sometimes empty. Looking back, you might find in yourself greater patience, compassion, and a deeper understanding of those in pain. No one wants to learn those lessons that way. But having walked through them, what remains in you is not only the wound, but also depth. Like a diamond, it never asked to be born. It is merely carbon pushed into inescapable conditions. But what matters is not only how strong the pressure is, but whether its internal structure allows it to rearrange into something more enduring. We are the same. We cannot control everything that happens, but we can gradually choose how we reorganize inside. Blame less, be less cruel to ourselves. Stop using our pain as a weapon to hurt others. Those seemingly small choices are the crystal bonds that decide whether we crack apart or become clearer. The hopeful thing is, unlike stone, we have awareness. We can set boundaries. There are pressures we refuse, environments so toxic we must leave. The lesson from Gemstones is not endure everything. The lesson is, within the hardships we must go through despite our efforts, we can gently ask, what, if anything, can this refine in me without making me lose myself? It might be self-respect that finally lets you say no after years of blind compliance. It might be honesty with your feelings, no longer pretending you're fine. It might be the ability to cherish ordinary days instead of chasing only achievements. Science tells us the beauty of a diamond lies in its clarity and the way it bends light. That clarity exists only when impurities are few and the crystal lattice is even. In our inner life, clarity might be the ability to see what truly matters to you at this age, free from the noise of others' expectations. Impurities might be outdated obsessions, misfitting standards, pointless comparisons. Pressure, if we know when to pause, observe, and let go of what is no longer ours, can sometimes help strain out the noise so we can see the core we want to keep. If you're now in your 60 seconds, 70 seconds, or beyond, You've likely passed through more than a few such furnaces. Your body may no longer be what it was. Your memory sometimes skips. Your steps are slower. But inside, if you look closely, you may find regions that have become extraordinarily transparent, where you no longer judge others as harshly, where "I'm sorry" comes more easily, where you value the presence of a loved one more than winning an argument. These did not appear out of nowhere. They are the gemstones that life's pressures have compressed, polished, and rearranged within you. Tonight, before sleep, you don't need to list every hardship you've endured. Just choose one thing in the present that is weighing on you. Worries about health, money, distance from your children or grandchildren, or a relationship not yet healed. Don't force yourself to be positive immediately. Acknowledge it. It is heavy. It is hard. Then ask yourself very softly, as if confiding with your own heart, is there any quality, however small, that might be taking shape here? Perhaps learning to ask for help instead of carrying everything alone. Perhaps allowing yourself to speak your true feelings instead of silently bearing them. Perhaps seeing your whole life and realizing you have done your best within your circumstances, and now it is time to allow yourself to soften. No one is coming to place you on a velvet stand like a flawless gem, and that is not necessary. What matters is that you recognize, in your own life story, amid all the layers of pressure, there have been moments of choice that made you kinder and deeper. Those choices, not your stumbles, are the truly sparkling parts. And if there is one gentle question to bring into your sleep tonight, perhaps it is this. Among the things weighing on your shoulders, is there any pressure which, if viewed with a softer eye, might be helping you refine yourself so that tomorrow, even by just 1 millimeter, you are clearer with yourself and gentler with those you love? And once we've seen how gemstones are born from pressure, another layer of meaning in mountains quietly appears. Beyond beauty and memory, might they also be silently governing the very breath of the sky above us? If so, how much of every rainstorm or dry day we live through belongs to the subtle arrangement of stone? Let your body keep relaxing, your breath steady, and let's look at Earth from high above, very high. Seen that way, mountain ranges appear not just as scenery, but as spines running along continents. They are not standing there merely to be admired. They shape the paths of wind, clouds, and rain. We can understand this gently, without formulas. Warm air from the ocean carries water vapor inland. When it meets a mountain range, it's forced to climb up the slopes. The higher it rises, the cooler it gets. Water vapor condenses into clouds, then into rain or snow on the windward side. We call this orographic lifting. The outcome is simple. One side of the mountains is green, humid, rainy. The other side, the leeward side, is dry, often becoming semi-desert or full desert, a single wall of rock, two different climate worlds. If you've lived in, passed through, or even just looked at a map of the United States, you've already seen this in real life. Think of the Sierra Nevada in California. Moist air from the Pacific blows in, hits the mountains, is lifted, and drops rain and snow on the western slopes. Thanks to that, forests, water sources, and reservoirs are replenished, feeding the fertile Central Valley, where a significant portion of the fruits and vegetables for the whole country is grown. But on the far side of the Sierra Nevada, after the air has shed much of its moisture and crossed the peaks, it descends, warms, and dries. There you find the Great Basin's dry valleys, places like Death Valley among the hottest spots on Earth. The same initial stream of air. But because of the mountains, one side becomes an orchard, the other a desert. The rocks say nothing, yet their power is etched into every raindrop and grain of dust. In the Pacific Northwest, the Cascades do the same. Moist air from the Pacific is blocked and wrung out over western Washington and Oregon, creating dense, wet forests. Once over the eastern slopes, rainfall decreases, the land dries, and farms inland must rely more carefully on irrigation to survive. The mountain range acts like an invisible hand drawing a boundary. Here you are bathed in rain. There you must guard each drop. The Rockies, running from Canada down to New Mexico, are not only a towering symbol, but a wall-shaping airflow between the drier west and the central interior. To the east of the Rockies stretch grasslands and the Great Plains, where rainfall, winds, thunderstorms, and tornadoes are all influenced by the meeting of cold northern air, warm Gulf air, and the terrain. Farther east, the Appalachians, lower and older, still serve as a gentle filter, affecting storm tracks, rainfall, forest distribution, coal deposits, and agriculture. Look at the map, and you'll see strings of cities, fields, railways, and industrial zones not randomly scattered, but aligned with valleys, plains, waterways, and climates determined by mountains millions of years ago. The everyday lives of hundreds of millions of people, from supermarket vegetable prices to where a family chooses to build a home, rest, in part, in the quiet hands of these ranges. The beautiful thing here is, the sky we like to think of as free clouds drifting at will, weather, unpredictable, is in fact guided by very concrete structures. The wind is not entirely free to blow wherever it wants. It is bent, forced upward, redirected around what is solid below. Once we understand this, we begin to see weather not as random luck, but as a story with causes, with order, and we can start to look at our inner life with the same eyes, behind the emotional weather of each day, the sudden anger, the inexplicable sadness, the surprising ease there may be in visible mountain ranges we rarely notice. Habits, beliefs, memories, the way we speak to ourselves. Think about it. Aren't their reactions so familiar we treat them as just who I am? For example, whenever someone disagrees, you immediately think, they look down on me. Whenever your children or grandchildren are busy and don't call, you whisper, I'm a burden. Whenever your health shows a small sign, your mind jumps to the worst case scenario. These thoughts do not fall from the sky. They may be the result of a lifetime of experiences, things your parents, teachers, colleagues once said, times you truly were abandoned, times no one listened. Over time, they've stacked into an inner mountain range of beliefs. Then, like wind meeting mountains, every new event that blows in is bent along that terrain. A gentle piece of feedback becomes a storm of hurt. An ordinary lull in affection swells into, they don't need me anymore. The emotional weather on the leeward side of those beliefs grows dry, flammable, capable of creating deserts between people who could otherwise be close. Tonight, we're not blaming those mountain ranges. They were built from the times you fought to survive, to understand the world, to protect yourself. They once helped, kept you alert in unstable environments, pushed you to strive so as not to be underestimated, and held your discipline so you could care for your family. But just as in nature, where a mountain range can unintentionally keep a region in long-term drought, inside us, if certain old beliefs are too high, too thick, They can block gentle rains from reaching us, not because life lacks love, but because love is stopped at the slopes of old conclusions. I'm not worthy. No one is sincere. I must carry everything alone. At 45, 60, 80, perhaps you can see more clearly than anyone that some of these ranges no longer need to stand so tall. Climate science offers a practical hint. No matter how large the mountains, there are still paths for wind to find, moisture to slip through valleys, glaciers to carve channels. Nature does not blow up mountains violently. It erodes them bit by bit, cutting passes, forming gaps, and saddles to restore balance. Likewise, inside us, we don't need to demolish all our beliefs in a single night. We only need to start noticing, it seems I interpret everything in the same old way. It seems I'm creating drought in my own heart by always choosing the bleakest reading. That awareness alone is already a small crack in the wall, enough for a little new rain to come through. Take a simple example. When a loved one doesn't call as usual, your old habit may send the wind down the path. They don't care about me anymore. That's the leeward slope. If tonight you gently review it, you might notice another opening. Perhaps they're busy or tired or assuming you need rest. If tomorrow, instead of silently hurting, you send a small message, I'm doing okay, just wanted to hear your voice when you have a moment, you've just opened a little valley for rain to pass. No grand philosophy, just a slight shift in the terrain inside, and the weather of the relationship changes. The same with yourself. Some mornings you wake with a heaviness, as if clouds can't clear an inner ridge. Instead of concluding, I'm weak, you might see it like a gentle climate scientist. Today, a low-pressure system is sitting here because I slept poorly, because of worrying news, because my body is changing. This cloud has causes. It is not an accusation. When we treat emotions like weather with underlying patterns, we fear them less, feel less broken, and as we judge ourselves less harshly, we slowly lower parts of that rigid inner range. The lovely truth is, at any age, we still have some power to adjust our inner climate backbone. Not by forcing ourselves to be cheerful, but by recognizing which elements bring rain and which create deserts, which habits moisten the soil, perhaps slow walks outside, a few lines of gratitude, talking with someone who understands, which beliefs behave like useless stone walls. I must always be strong. I must never ask for help. Only results prove my worth. Each time you choose a softer thought, a kinder action toward yourself, you open another pass in those invisible mountains. Before sleep takes you, you might try a small visualization. See your whole life as a continent, with mountains, plains, rivers. Ask yourself quietly, which ranges are beautiful and worth keeping your decent principles, your honesty, your sense of responsibility, which ranges have accidentally blocked the rain, those overly rigid beliefs, those outdated judgments. No need to answer tonight, just plant the question, like a breeze touching a slope. Out there, nature always seeks balance over time. Within you, if you listen with kindness, you have that capacity too. And perhaps the lesson to carry as you close your eyes is this. Just as mountains shape the climate of the sky above, what we hold fixed inside shapes the emotional climate of our own life and the lives of those we love. If we dare adjust that inner landscape a little, not destroying ourselves, only lowering the sharpest peaks, widening a few soft valleys, then gentle rains will find their way back, soothing the remaining days of our life in a way that is natural, quiet, and worthy of a smile. And once we begin to notice the invisible ranges within, another question softly arises. What about the fractures? On the Earth's surface, is every deep crack, every canyon a wound? And if so, why are some wounds as breathtaking as the Grand Canyon? Let your body rest a bit longer. Inhale slowly, exhale fully. If you like, close your eyes and picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast cliff at sunset in the American West. Before you is not a flat wall, but a gigantic maze of vertical faces, bands of red, orange, yellow, purple, stretching to the horizon. This is the Grand Canyon. Many people, seeing it for the first time, exclaim, "It's as if the earth has been torn open." But looking more closely, we see, this is not a fresh wound. It is an exposed memory of millions of years, carved by one of the gentlest forces we know, flowing water. Science tells this story simply and profoundly. The area now called the Colorado Plateau was uplifted during tectonic processes. As the land rose, the Colorado River already there suddenly gained more slope, because its upper reaches were now much higher than its outlet. Under gravity, water always seeks lower ground. The steeper the slope, the stronger the flow. Over millions of years, that river, carrying sand, gravel, and fragments of rock, flowed and abraded, cutting gradually deeper into the bedrock. This is called incision, forming a canyon, not one cataclysmic flood. Not a single violent disaster, but countless ordinary days, countless rainy seasons, countless grains of sand rubbing stone bit by bit. With patience, as the river cut down, ancient sedimentary layers were revealed. Each band of color marks a different geologic time. Limestones formed under old seas, sandstones from ancient deserts, mudstones from long-gone plains. In the canyon walls, geologists read a history spanning hundreds of millions of years. Visitors standing at the rim, even without knowing the rock names, feel something deeply human. Some fractures do not ruin the surface, they reveal depth. What's subtle is, the Grand Canyon is not just the work of water. It is the product of many elements together. Uplift of the plateau, a climate that allows continuous flow and enough time for erosion to do its work. Without uplift, the river would simply meander across a flat plain, with no deep gorge. Without water, only rock, no incision. Without a long time, only shallow grooves. Meaning, this great chasm is not a single accident, but a long symphony between uplift and flow. Looking at the wider world, Earth is full of similar evidence. U-shaped valleys carved out by glaciers. Immense masses of ice weighing tons crawl slowly over mountains, rounding the slopes, leaving behind soft basins that later become lakes, meadows, and places where people settle. Narrow canyons where rivers bite deep into hard rock, creating landscapes that are both rugged and magnificent. Fractures from tectonic faults that, over time, get sculpted by wind and water into valleys convenient for railways, highways, and towns to arise. Nature is remarkably consistent in turning initial damage into new forms with new purposes. However, if we look only at a very thin slice of time, these processes seem brutal. Erosion means destruction. Flowing water carries soil away. Glaciers plow through and shatter rock. Geological faults split the ground open. But when we shift our gaze to the scale of millions of years, the picture changes. Thanks to erosion, fertile soil is carried down to the plains. Thanks to the passage of ice, deep basins hold water, creating new habitats. Thanks to fractures, groundwater finds its way, plants find footholds, and people find passes through the mountains. Perhaps at 45, 60, or 80, you are no stranger to that feeling of cracking open in your own life, a marriage that once seemed solid and then broke, a friendship you trusted that fractured, a day when a doctor's diagnosis forced your entire life plan to pivot, a financial shock, a professional incident, a door slammed shut before you could prepare. In those moments, everything feels like a fault line in the ground. Ugly, dangerous, terrifying. Nobody standing inside their breaking point can calmly say, "Oh, here it is, the future Grand Canyon of my life." That is not realistic. But tonight, in this quiet space, with many things already belonging to the past, you can allow yourself to look back at a few old cracks the way a gentle geologist would, not denying the pain, but not stopping the story there. Choose one fracture that happened years ago, a loss, a relationship that ended, a career turn you didn't want. When it first happened, it felt like the earth split in two, but over time, what has grown around that crack? Maybe a new relationship, more honest, less pretending. Maybe a job that is humbler in status, but better suited to your heartbeat, so you sleep more peacefully. Maybe a calmer faith, not because you were forced to believe, but because you walked through a dark valley and still found yourself held. Just as the Colorado keeps flowing, time in your life also does not freeze at the crack. It keeps moving, keeps wearing down, keeps carving, keeps carrying light in. At first, the wound is a raw, red gash. Over the years, the sharp edges are rounded by wind and rain. Sunlight lingers long enough for shrubs, weeds, and then even trees to root along ledges that once seemed unlivable. Life has a strange patience. It tries every crevice. So does the human inner world, if we give ourselves time and do not bolt our hearts completely shut. Something soft will make its way into the place that once hurt the most. This does not mean every wound must be made use of into something beautiful. There are injuries too deep, losses too great, where the word beautiful only adds pain. We honor that, and at the same time, we do not deny that many of the best parts of us were born because we did not let a single break turn us entirely to stone. We allowed ourselves to hurt. But then, one day, we agreed to take one more step, to answer a call, to reply to a message, to see a doctor, to do physical therapy, to seek help, to open our mouths to apologize or to forgive. Those very small steps are the river patient, repetitive, day after day, eventually carving the crack into a valley with a path through. If you've been to the Grand Canyon, you may remember the feeling of standing high above, sensing a very strange kind of silence. Not cold silence, more like the earth breathing slower there. If you haven't, imagining it is enough. Its beauty is not smooth, not neatly finished. It is the beauty of something that has agreed to expose its inside, to show each layer of history, each uplift, each season of erosion. In a very particular sense, it is the beauty of not hiding. In the later years of adulthood, you have both the right and the capacity to be beautiful in that way. You don't have to hide every scar, literal or emotional. You don't have to perform the role of, "I'm perfectly fine." Often, the most precious thing about your presence in the lives of children, grandchildren, friends, is this. They meet someone who has cracked, has broken, has struggled, but has not turned bitter. They meet a living Grand Canyon, deep, layered, sometimes sharp, sometimes gentle, but filled with clean air where others can come and learn how to breathe. The science of erosion also reminds us of something interesting. To become a valley, a crack must be touched by light. If a fracture lies forever in the dark, sealed off, with no water allowed to flow through, it remains only a break. But when the ground opens, rain falls in, rivers enter, winds pass through, it becomes part of a larger landscape. In life, our willingness to speak of the things that once hurt us selectively, safely, to the right people is how we open that crack to the light. Not to complain, not to show off our suffering, but to let truth be seen, to give understanding and compassion a channel to reach. Tonight, before sleep, if you'd like, you can try a very small exercise in your mind. Think of one crack that once made you think, "I'm ruined." Sit quietly with it for a moment, as if standing at the rim of a canyon. Ask, from this fracture, in these past years, has anything new appeared? A boundary you learned, a softer way you treat others, a path you would never have imagined without that forced turn. If the answer is yes, even the smallest yes, acknowledge it. You don't have to say thank you, pain. Just recognize that you did not let it be the final full stop. The lesson we want to offer, in a very soft voice, is this. On Earth, some of the most stunning landscapes are the results of immense ruptures and long erosion. In a human life, some of the most trustworthy qualities come from breaks we walk through without losing our belief in what is decent. If we allow time, light, and healthy currents to touch our wounds instead of sealing them tight or digging them deeper, those lines may not disappear, but they can become part of the inner topography that lets us, and those we love, have a place to stand, to walk, to look down and understand. Hurt is not always the end. Sometimes it is where depth begins. And with that thought, you can let your shoulders soften a bit more. Let this night grow lighter, like a gentle river, quietly tracing its way between old stone layers. And as we begin to see how the fractures in our lives can turn into valleys, another question appears softly. Beyond what our eyes can see in the mountains, are there invisible rhythms quietly working around us, protecting us, even on nights when we feel utterly alone? Let your body sink a little deeper into the mattress. Feel the pleasant weight of yourself, and imagine the mountain ranges out there in the dark. At night, they are not postcard bright, not welcoming tourists, not glowing on phone screens. They simply stand. But within them, and beneath them, lives a world of minerals, flows of energy, ancient magnetic rhythms, quietly at work. Mountains are not just soulless rock. They are the visible part of a much deeper system. In each seemingly ordinary rock lie countless tiny minerals: quartz, feldspar, mica, calcite, magnetite. Names that sound distant but are intimately woven into our lives. From rock, we extract metals to build bridges, airplanes, power lines, and medical equipment. From rock, we get calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, trace elements that nourish bones, blood, and the nervous system. As ranges are worn down, minerals travel with streams and rivers to the plains, becoming fertile soil, rice, vegetables, fruit, and finally, the meal in the small house where you are now lying. Whether you live in a city or the countryside, shop at a local market or a modern supermarket, somewhere in that chain are the very old footprints of mountain stone. There is another, subtler part: natural radioactivity. The word radiation often startles people, evoking accidents, bombs, illness. But in truth, Earth has long contained naturally radioactive elements: uranium, thorium, potassium, 40. In rock, soil, and even in our bodies. They constantly emit tiny amounts of radiation at the levels present in most places where humans live. This remains within safe limits, not a looming threat. On the contrary, it helps keep Earth's interior warm. Heat from radioactive decay, along with leftover heat from Earth's formation, powers convective currents in the mantle, helping tectonic plates move, mountains rise and wear down, and mineral cycles redistribute. In other words, a part of the planet's deep life, the very rhythms that helped shape continents, climate, and conditions suitable for life, is sustained by faint, steady, unshowy rays. We spend our whole lives on top of these processes and rarely think of them. Each time you lie in your familiar bed, inside walls of brick, concrete, wood, glass, materials from the earth, you are held inside a framework of minerals forged over hundreds of millions of years. Not perfect, but enduring. The house may be old, paint may peel, but the deeper material foundation of the planet continues to play its role, so you can close your eyes without worrying the ground will vanish come morning. And then there is an even more invisible breath, Earth's magnetic field. Deep inside, the outer core is molten iron and nickel, constantly in motion. The movement of this electrically conductive metal generates a magnetic field around the planet. Like an invisible cloak, this field deflects a large portion of charged particles from the solar wind streams of high-speed particles blown out from solar activity. Without this magnetic shield, our atmosphere would be eroded more strongly, the surface bathed in more high-energy radiation, and life as we know it would struggle to exist. Occasionally, some particles slip in near the poles, collide with the atmosphere, and produce shimmering auroras that people in Alaska, Canada, and Northern Europe can see. Those are rare moments when we visually glimpse the shield. Most of the time, it works silently, asking for no praise. Mountains, with magnetic minerals, sometimes let us sense the field in concrete ways. A compass needle aligning north, rock layers recording ancient magnetic directions that tell scientists how continents once drifted. But for you, lying here listening, the crucial thing is this. Right now, as you seem to be doing nothing, an ancient system of molten core, magnetic field, atmosphere, mountains, and minerals is cooperating to keep your surroundings breathable, drinkable, livable. You don't have to command it. You don't pay a monthly subscription for it. It is there as a foundation. Recognizing this, we can take one more step inward. Just as Earth has invisible protective systems, your own life, especially after many decades, also has built-in foundations you sometimes forget. When young, we live mostly on the surface. Job, title, who understands us, who recognizes us. At a certain age, especially 50, 60, 70, we start seeing more clearly what remains after all the collisions. A few real friends, a few unshakable values, a few principles that stay regardless of changes in address, income, or health. These might be your habit of not lying, the way you try to answer when someone calls for help, the reflexive patience you've developed in caring for someone sick, your commitment to paying bills on time, not sinking into reckless debt. The way, even when tired, you straighten up a little so your home is a place where anyone entering feels at ease. These small things do not sparkle like diamonds in a display case, but over time they form an ethical field, a grounding force that makes children, neighbors, and friends feel safer around you. They may not name it, just as we rarely say, "Thank you, Earth's magnetic field," but they feel it. The trouble is, we often only pay attention to what's broken, missing, or hurtful, forgetting the protective mechanisms that have proven themselves. In past hardships, you did not collapse completely. You found a way to move forward to this very night, to lie here and hear these words. That doesn't erase pain, but it is proof that within you there is your own molten core. Will to live, need to love, capacity to learn. Around it is the magnetic field of habits, beliefs, and principles that kept you from falling out of orbit. Seeing this is not self-delusion, it's balance. Like the story of radioactivity, there are dangerous aspects and human-made disasters, but if we only fixate on those and forget that natural radiation is also part of what powers Earth's inner life, we're left with fear alone. In a human life, if you remember only your mistakes and regrets, and never the times you chose what was right under pressure, you lose trust in your own foundation. Tonight, before sleeping, you can try a very gentle exercise, light as a breath. Instead of listing what you haven't done, close your eyes and ask, what in my life has proven that I can trust myself, at least to some extent? Maybe 30 years of working steadily without walking away mid-storm. Maybe caring for your parents until the end. Maybe raising children in less than easy conditions. Maybe surviving an illness and still keeping your kindness. Each of these is a vein of mineral, a grain of magnetic iron, contributing to your life's field. Of course, no one is perfect. Even Earth's magnetic field fluctuates, even reverses polarity over long cycles. But fluctuation does not mean disappearance. It simply reminds us that living systems are dynamic, yet tend to protect life. Your inner world is the same. There are phases when you lose faith, snap more easily, and close your heart. If you understand that as a temporary variation, you'll be less likely to pronounce the harsh verdict, "I'm ruined." Instead, you can slowly recalibrate. Return to habits that once made you calmer, to people who once felt like a safe shield, to values that once made you respect yourself. And, just as minerals from mountains wash down to nourish the plains, you are allowed to recognize that what you've lived through does not belong only to you. The experience, steadiness, and compassion you've accumulated are emotional resources flowing to the next generation. Sometimes it's as simple as a sentence you casually say to a grandchild. It's okay. If you're wrong, you fix it. Just stay kind. Sometimes it's the way you refuse to judge harshly when hearing a young person's story. To you, these moments may seem small. To them, they can be fertile soil. The lesson this part of the story hopes to leave with you very softly, so the night does not grow heavy, is this. Just as Earth has invisible, enduring systems that guard life, your life also has foundations tested by time. Instead of staring only at the cracks, allow yourself a bit more trust in what has held. Even if you feel tired, slower, with fewer roles than before, your presence with all its mineralized experience and moral field is still making the space around you safer. With that in mind, you can exhale fully. Let your body grow lighter and let those ancient systems outside keep watch over the sky, while the gentle foundations within you keep watch over your sleep tonight. And when we've seen how those invisible systems quietly shelter us, another deeply human question arises. On such an ancient planet among mountains, magnetic fields, enduring stone, why do humans want to carve faces and names into rock, as if to cling to a fragment of eternity for themselves? Keep your body just as it is, breathing steadily. Night is drifting slowly beyond the window, and we'll wander through a few special mountains. Mountains human hands have touched, drilled, carved, turning rock into faces, words, messages. Not to judge, but to more gently understand something deep in our nature, the fear of being forgotten. Picture Mount Rushmore in the soft light of late afternoon. 4 faces of US presidents: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, emerging from a granite cliff in South Dakota. It's one of the most recognizable monuments, a backdrop for tourist photos, school books, and movies. Technically, it is a feat. Hundreds of workers, years of drilling, blasting, chiseling, transforming a natural rock face into a political, historical monument. In terms of story, it sends a message. These are key figures in shaping the nation. We carve them into a mountain to say their impact outlives a single human lifetime. But if we step back and look more broadly at human history, Mount Rushmore is no exception. Since ancient times, people have shared the same impulse: to use stone to resist oblivion. The Egyptians built temples, colossal statues of pharaohs, inscribed names and victories on stone walls, believing that a name spoken would keep the soul alive. The Mesopotamians carved laws into stone steles so they could not be casually altered. Greeks and Romans built temples, carved inscriptions, sculpted gods and heroes, so memory wouldn't fade with oral tales. In Asia, dynasties raised stone stelae to record merit, treaties, poems, and exam laureates. Wherever there was hard rock and enough resources, we find traces of the same dream. If we write in the ink of stone, time will hesitate longer before erasing. Viewed purely rationally, we might say this is a political need. Propaganda, display of power, that is partly true. But beneath those surface reasons lies something softer, purely human. The fear that if nothing of us is recorded, we will vanish as though we never were. This fear grows sharper beside mountains that outlast every dynasty. Humans are thin, fragile. One lifetime compared to the age of rock is just a faint breath on cold glass. So we think, if we attach our faces to mountains, carve our names into stone, perhaps we'll stay a little longer. Tonight, we don't have to rush to call that vanity. If you've lived more than 40, 50, 80 years, you know intimately the feeling of time passing quickly, of people who were once the center of your world now living only in framed photos. That feeling sometimes stirs a question much like the dream of monuments. In the end, what of me remains? Will anyone remember? If not, did all the effort, sacrifice, and worry mean anything? Instead of dodging it, let's sit with that question gently. If stone could speak, it might smile, because no matter how many monuments we carve, time has its own language. Wind, rain, ice, heat, erosion. Mount Rushmore, for all its size, is not eternal. Given enough time, it too will wear, crack, and crumble like any other cliff. Ancient Egyptian statues have lost noses, arms. Inscriptions fade. Names once carved with reverence are now studied, debated, or simply forgotten. Stone, in its long game, takes no sides. At first, this may sound sad, but if we look one step further, it becomes liberating. If everything we scratch into rock cannot truly defeat time, then perhaps eternity does not lie in the material we inscribe, but in what stone cannot hold for us, our impact on living hearts. Think of who truly formed you, not always those with statues, street names, or faces on mountains. Often it's a patient teacher, a kind neighbor, a doctor who spoke with both competence and humanity, a friend who stayed in your hardest hour. These people may leave the world without a single line in stone, yet they leave marks in how you treat others, how you believe in goodness, and how you survive hard moments. That impact is not measured in cubic meters of granite, but in circles spreading through human lives. A timely word that kept someone from giving up, a kindness that convinced someone this world still has soft places, a sincere apology that eased a long-held wound. None of these is engraved on cliffs, but emotionally they are inherited. The person receiving them treats others more gently, then those people treat others kindly, and so on. Layer upon layer, like sediment, form the invisible geology of a community. At a certain age, recognizing this brings both a twinge of tenderness and a quiet warmth. Tenderness because you understand there may never be a monument or history book for you. Warmth because you realize you do not need them for your life to have meaning. Instead of exhausting yourself chiseling your name into stone, you can calmly carve your presence into kind memories in a few people, and that is enough. Interestingly, science, in its own way, sides with this idea. When we study stone monuments, we don't see only the honored figures. We also see the values of the era that built them, what they revered, believed, concealed. Mount Rushmore, for instance, alongside honoring 4 presidents, is entwined with debates about land, indigenous cultures, and who has the right to tell history. What does that mean? It means that what one generation tries to nail down as eternal truth in stone is always subject to rereading, questioning, and reinterpretation by those who come after. Nothing carved in rock is immune to being seen anew. But a kind act you offered a grandchild, a neighbor, or a patient exists differently. It's stored in living memory. It doesn't need global consensus, doesn't go through committees, and doesn't fear political dispute. It only needed to be right in that moment. For the receiver, it becomes a reference point. Oh, so it's possible to live like that. They try to live a bit like that. That influence has no monument, but it has a path. If we're willing to see our lives this way, the question, what do I leave behind, softens and loses some of its pressure. Instead of worrying whether our name will be spoken, we can ask, will anyone treat others a bit more gently because they once met me? Will anyone dare to be more honest because they saw me choose honesty? Will anyone feel less ashamed of their cracks because they heard me speak of mine without hiding? If the answer is yes, for even 1 or 2 people, that is your truest monument. Tonight, lying here, you may remember what you haven't achieved. Unfinished careers, dreams unrealized, regrets in the family. Those aches are real, but alongside them, give your mind a small chance, like a warm lamp in the corner of the room, to count a few times you have laid a small stone in someone else's life. Maybe it's the meals you cooked for years for your family, the books you patiently read to a child, the quiet money you sent to help someone in need, the moment you spoke up to defend someone weaker, while others stayed silent. All of that, gathered together, is the warm stone wall you've been building, not for your name, but for the life around you. Perhaps this is where mountains and rocks teach us the gentlest lesson. Stone can bear the carved faces of heroes, but it is just as willing to be the silent foundation for trees to grow, for houses to stand, for footsteps to pass. Mountains can be monuments, but they are also sources of water, places where clouds catch and become rain. In the end, what makes us grateful to mountains is not the portraits on their cliffs, but the fact that they keep standing there, doing their quiet work for the whole land. So, the lesson to carry into your sleep tonight can be as simple as this. We do not need to carve ourselves into mountains for our lives to have meaning. In a world already too full of noise, your gentle endurance, keeping your word, keeping your bonds, keeping your kindness, is the soft monument that those who encounter it will remember. And if one day our names fade into dust, but a few people are still able to handle one another more gently because we once treated them gently, then a few people are braver. After all, they once saw us stand upright. Then perhaps that is enough for a human life lived among ancient mountains and a very wide sky. With that thought, you can exhale deeply. Let go of what does not need to harden and keep only the warm, quiet lines enduring as stone within your own heart. And once we have accepted that we do not need our faces carved into mountains to be remembered, another natural question rises. Very small but persistent, if not stone. What do human beings have to heal themselves to feel that they still belong to something greater and longer lasting than their own lifetime? Try to recall, perhaps many years ago, a time you stood before a real mountain range. It might have been the Rockies, the Appalachians, some range out west, or just a low rocky hillside on a family trip. It didn't need to be overwhelmingly majestic. It only needed a wall of rock, a clear horizon, a space wide enough that your own voice felt small. In that moment, if you pay close attention, you may remember something happened before you found words for it. Your heartbeat slowed a little. Your shoulders dropped. Your breath unconsciously grew deeper. Thoughts about emails, bills, news, phone calls faded, making room for a simple sense of order. You are standing before something that does not need you to control it. That feeling is not imaginary. In recent decades, neuroscience and psychology have tried to measure something human intuition has known for a very long time. Nature, especially wide, still landscapes like mountains, soothes the nervous system. When we look at the simple contours of mountains, the muted tones of rock, the green patches of trees, our eyes are not forced to process the rapid, flickering stimuli of screens. Our directed attention system, the one we use to work, solve problems, scan for risk, gets to rest. In its place, a softer, effortless mode of attention, often called natural attention, is activated. This relates to the idea of attention restoration. Natural environments let the brain recharge, easing mental fatigue. At the same time, physiological studies show that simply looking at greenery, water, mountains, or hearing natural sounds tends to slightly lower heart rate, stabilize blood pressure, and reduce cortisol, the stress hormone. Especially for older adults, nature, even seen through a window, can help lift mood, lessen loneliness, and support better sleep. It is not a magic pill that replaces doctors, but it is a kind, familiar environmental ally that our bodies understand deeply, because hundreds of thousands of years of evolution took place in natural surroundings, not amid alarms and glowing screens. Standing before a silent mountain range, we also receive an unspoken message. Not everything demands an immediate response. Mountains don't answer emails. Mountains don't rush to correct rumors. Mountains don't worry about what to post tonight on social media. They simply are. They are not indifferent, they are steady. And that steadiness allows the frantic parts inside us to be set down for a moment. That's why so many people, in seasons of confusion, feel drawn to go somewhere with mountains, sea, open space. They are seeking the oldest healing technology they ever knew. Before the word therapy existed the silence of something larger than themselves. The comforting thing is, to access this ancient technology, we don't always have to drive hours to real mountains. At 45, 60, 90, not everyone still has the health or means to go. But our brain carries a gift. The ability to imagine vividly enough to create real effects in the body. When you close your eyes and picture in detail, the sensory regions of the brain still respond. That is why guided imagery exercises can slow the heart, loosen muscles, and foster a sense of safety. So, if you agree, tonight let's treat the silence of the mountain as a healing technology you can bring into your bedroom. No apps, no new devices needed. Lie in whatever position feels most comfortable. Your head is supported just right. Your hands are resting lightly on your belly or by your sides. If it feels safe, close your eyes. Imagine yourself leaning back against an ancient mountainside. Not a sheer, deadly cliff, but a broad expanse of rock, warm, slightly rough, flat enough to support your whole back. The space around you is so quiet you can hear your own breathing more clearly than the wind. The sky has turned into the deep blue of late evening. The last sunlight brushes the far peaks. A thin line of gold then fades. Only rock, sky, and the sense of very solid ground beneath remain. Feel the weight of your body transferring into the rock at your back and the earth beneath your hips and heels. There is nothing you have to hold up. The rock does not need you to sit straight, so it won't fall. You can allow yourself to lean a little more. Inhale slowly through your nose, feeling the cool air coming in. Exhale through your mouth or nose, just as slowly, as if each breath out were a small stream of sand sliding down. No need to count. No need for a complex technique. Just let each exhale be another permission slip for your body to grow heavier, like stone. In that image, you may hear faint sounds. Wind through a few bushes, insects far away, perhaps a small stream in the valley below. No horns, no alarms, no screens. The mountain does not ask how many tasks you finish today. It does not care how successful you are, how much you earn, or whether your children are impressive enough. It asks only one thing. Right now, for these few minutes, you are allowed to carry nothing. Scientifically speaking, when you allow yourself to enter such a state, even only in imagination, you are activating the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for rest, recovery, digestion, and healing. A slower heart rate signals to your brain that there is no immediate danger. Relaxed muscles signal that energy can shift from fight, flight to repair, nourish. Practicing this state regularly, especially before sleep, helps deepen your rest and supports memory, immunity, and mood. It does not replace medication if your doctor has prescribed it, but it is an extremely gentle, cost-free ally. The interesting thing is, many people think healing must mean doing more, taking more supplements, reading more books, joining more programs. But the oldest technology mountains use is to do less, to remain still, to be silent, so that other systems can work. When we allow ourselves to be quiet before the image of a mountain, real or imagined, we are stepping into the same principle. We are not changing the past, not controlling others, and not solving every problem of our children and grandchildren. We are simply stopping the attempt to do everything at once. That stopping, which sounds passive, is in fact the condition that lets body and mind process and re-knit themselves. At your age, having lived long enough, you know the cost of years without permission to be still. Sleepless nights worrying about money, illness, and loved ones. Seasons of swallowing every sorrow, smiling for others while your stomach tightened, your heart raced, your shoulders locked like rock. No blame at the time. Life needed your effort. But if now, though there are still things to worry about, you grant yourself a few minutes each evening to lean against the mountain, that is not selfish. It is a wise way to keep the remaining years from being needlessly eroded. And as we've said earlier, beyond real mountains, your life has had rock walls in human form. Perhaps a life partner who walked long years with you. Perhaps an old friend, an adult child or grandchild, a teacher, a faith community. They are not perfect, but they have been places where you could lean emotionally. Remembering them is also a kind of healing technology, a reminder that you have never been entirely alone, that there have been and still are foundations you can trust. In the end, there is one more small lesson the silence of mountains tries to give us. If we are willing to listen, healing is not always fixing everything. Often it is learning to sit with what cannot be fixed yet, in a space that feels safe enough. Mountains do not erase their fractures, do not cover their gorges. They stand beside them, accepting them as part of the terrain. We can practice something similar with ourselves. Sit quietly with regrets, unanswered questions, fears about age, illness, and our children's future. No need to solve them all in one night. Just don't drown them in noise, and don't let them drown you in panic. Lay them down beside you. Lean against your inner cliff, the values, experiences, and gentle beliefs you've built and breathe. If there is one sentence to take with you as you close your eyes tonight, perhaps it is this. In a world constantly pushing us to speak, act, prove ourselves, the gentle silence we intentionally give ourselves each night is a form of ancient wisdom. The wisdom mountains have practiced for millions of years. And who knows, if we learn to trust the foundations we already have and allow ourselves a little stillness every evening, the rest of our life may grow less hurried, less frightened, and warmer, like the feeling of your back resting against solid rock, under a wide, kind sky that lets you sleep deeply. Now let your body remain just as it is. No need to adjust much. Simply notice your breath and see whether it's already slower and deeper than when we began. Now we'll speak of a truth that is both scientific and quietly romantic in a very practical way. No mountain stands forever as it did at the beginning. Wind, rain, ice, sun, the changes of day and night. These are patient artisans, touching the mountain hour by hour. They do not destroy with one blow. They tap gently, steadily, over millions of years. We call this phenomenon erosion. At first, it sounds only like wearing away, being taken. But if we look at the full life cycle, the story is different. Rain falls on the slopes, seeps into cracks, and carries grains of sand and tiny fragments of rock. Snow and ice form and melt, expand and contract, prying rock apart into smaller pieces. Wind moves dust, gravity pulls soil and stones downhill. All the material leaving the heights does not vanish. Carried by streams and rivers, it gradually settles in lower places. Over time, these sediments build fertile plains where most of us live, farm, and build our cities. If you look at a map of the United States, you'll see erosion's fingerprints everywhere. The Rockies, Appalachians, and Sierra Nevada, slowly send their material down to their feet, helping form plains and valleys where people can farm, build roads, and plant homes. The Midwest, with its endless corn and wheat fields, benefits from glacial deposits and ground-down rock. Along the Mississippi, sediment from countless small rivers gathers over thousands of years, forming rich lands that, despite today's challenges of floods and levees, still anchor agriculture, towns, ports, and trade. Even the places we call the nation's heartland, flat, fertile lands feeding families, communities. The whole country are in part the patient gift of mountains that have surrendered some of their height. Sharp, majestic peaks may be places few can live long, but the soils born of their wearing down become home to millions of people, raising children, building schools, hospitals, and lives. In a very real sense, mountains have chosen not to keep everything for themselves. When we accept this truth, erosion is no longer only a sad story. It is a cycle. Mountains rise through tectonics, stand firm for a time, then let go, grain by grain, becoming the foundation for life elsewhere. On a human timescale, we see mostly the loss. A riverbank collapsing this year, a slope sliding after heavy rain. And yes, at short scales, there are real damages humans must face and protect against. But if we lengthen our gaze, we start to see a gentler logic woven into slow change. Matter does not disappear. It relocates to where it fits another chapter of the planet's story. There is something deeply human here, especially for those who've lived through many decades. When young, we want to be tall, to prove ourselves, rise, build, keep, surpass yesterday. That is natural, like mountains uplifting in early tectonic bursts. But as we go on, we witness layers of erosion, health not what it was, social roles shifting, work stepping back, big decisions moving into our children's hands, the peaks we dreamed of or once reached becoming distant. If we look only with a competitive eye, we see only loss. Loss of power, speed, sharpness of sight, memory, and loved ones. And the great fear, like a mountain fearing erosion, is that one day we will be worn down until nothing is left. But precisely here, the story of mountains offers a softer, kinder way to see ourselves. A mountain cannot choose whether it erodes. It doesn't run surveys, it doesn't vote. Yet the way its material descends to become soil for lower lands quietly tells us, losing some of your height is not always failure. Sometimes it is a hidden form of giving. In a human life, many beautiful things appear only when we dare not cling to everything as before. A parent stops intervening in every decision of adult children and lets them take responsibility. On the surface, it's losing control, but in truth, it's giving them a chance to grow. A leader chooses to hand over, not cling to the chair until the end. Outwardly, it's coming down the mountain. But in reality, it's enriching the ground for others. An elder stops trying to be right in every family debate, accepts being outdated in a few small matters, in order to preserve what matters more. The warmth that lets children and grandchildren keep coming home, even within our own bodies. Accepting new limits and rhythms is a kind of yielding to nourish. Not forcing ourselves to perform like we're 30, not despising ourselves for needing a nap, not treating taking medication as failure, but as part of caring for the system. When we resist less, when we stop fighting the fact that the physical peaks are lowering, we free up immense energy to devote to subtler things. Listening, connecting, savoring, being present. just as tiny grains from the mountain, if they stubbornly clung to the summit, could never become rich soil on the plain. The qualities we've gathered through life, experience, wisdom, calm, cannot become gifts if we hold them tight for our own knowing. But if we let them come down the mountain through honest conversations instead of lecturing, through stories told without self-glorifying, through the example of how we admit fault, accept change, then they can settle into our children's and grandchildren's lives like gentle silt. You may have felt this from the receiving end. A grandparent left little material wealth, but left a few sentences, a way of living, a memory. Those days were harder than now, but I still didn't cheat, didn't give up. Words like that might have been background noise when you were young, but at some later bend in your life, they suddenly became a standard, a fertile ground for you to stand on. Now, it is your turn. Even if you feel yourself slowing, retiring, you may be the one quietly sending silt into the future. This does not require you to become a speaker, write a book, or start a foundation. Sometimes it is as simple as how you accept your age without bitterness, how you refuse to use old wounds as blades against others, how you speak of those who have passed with gratitude more than resentment. How do you avoid transmitting your panic as a burden to your children, and instead turn it into calm guidance? If something happens, just do the kindest thing you can. That's enough. Each such attitude is a particle of mountain, wearing away beautifully. No noise, no monument, but making the soil softer for later footsteps. Earth science offers a lovely detail. River deltas rich with silt. Trade. Civilization are also fragile, vulnerable to floods and rising seas. Every gift comes with a side that needs care. Likewise, what we pass down is not only good lessons, but also patterns, beliefs, and burdens that may be unconsciously transmitted. So, in this last stretch of the journey, as the mountain in us wears down, we also have a chance to choose what we send downstream. Do we want to pass on bitterness, shame, resentment, or do we want, bravely, to hold them, transform them, before letting go? Do we want to transmit fear the world only gets worse, or a clear-eyed trust? The world is complicated, but our children and grandchildren have their strength, and we have done our part. Do we want to leave behind warehouses of unresolved arguments, or a few late but sincere apologies to untangle some of the knots? No one can do this perfectly. Mountains cannot decide which ridge erodes and which remains, but with a bit of awareness, we can nudge the flow in the time left. Fewer words that harden the ground, more words that loosen it. Less proving we are right, more proving we love. Less clutching at roles, more handing over chances. These yieldings, on the surface, may make us feel smaller, but in the deeper span of time, they are what let life stay green. And then, as with every piece of tonight's story, we close this part with a question that does not demand an immediate answer, only asks to rest somewhere in you, like a small grain of silt. Among all the things you are trying so hard to hold on to, is there something which, if you loosen your grip just a little, might become a quiet gift that the next generation will benefit from, without ever needing to know your name? You may close your eyes now. Let your thoughts dissolve like mist. If your mind still wants to wander, let it continue the journey to the next video, where we'll go deeper into the mysteries of the soul. And if your body is tired, just let this sound lull you into sleep. No effort needed, just breathe and remember, everything you are searching for is already resting quietly within yourself.